Hey, this is Web3 Talks, the podcast where we learn how to build Web3 projects directly from Web3 founders. My name is Maciej Budkowski and I talk with the founders about their projects, business models, technology, community building, user acquisition strategies, and more. If you want to start your own project or are just curious about the space, this podcast will bring you answers. Stay tuned. Hello, Leon. I'm very happy to see you on the podcast.
GM Mac, thanks for having me.
Yeah, GM, I think it's evening, at least in my place, but in Web3, it's always GM somewhere. So
yeah, GM is a life philosophy.
Yeah.
Building public goods.
Yeah, definitely. So very happy to see you. Just before we start, I'd like to tell everyone that there's a Discord channel for our podcast. So if you want to discuss episodes or read some cool content about Web3, you will see the link in the description and we can go directly to the episode. So for those who don't know Leon Erichsen or Erichsen, what's your...
Erichsen in German, but Erichsen works well in English too.
Okay, so Leon worked with the builder community at Gitcoin. For those who don't know and lived in a cave for the last 3 years, it's a platform that lets you fund and receive funding for open source projects that do public good. It's one of the most prominent Web3 projects, one of these that when people ask me like what Web3 has done for the world, this is one of the names that I put in the conversations. But, before we get to Gitcoin, could you tell us a few words about your background in this crypto Web3 space?
For sure. Yeah. So thanks so much for having me, Mac. Happy to be on a podcast that's also based in Europe. Hope I was allowed to say that.
Yeah, that's okay. You could dox me, no problem.
Cool. Yeah, so I'm from Germany. In university, I studied mix of economics and philosophy. And then when working at a bank in 2017, I stumbled upon Bitcoin because, bankers got kind of excited about the price moves they were seeing. And
yeah,
but still university student, just an intern, and thought, okay, you probably need to check this out. Also, my boss asked me to do that. And then, fortunately enough, like the same day, I sort of fortunately didn't end up, just at the Bitcoin white paper, but stumbled upon a video. I think it was Vitalik Buterin, the founder of Ethereum at TechCrunch. And he, many listeners might know, has a great ability to sort of just share that spirit of programmable distributed networks. And with my social science or political economics background, I was sort of fascinated that we could now just program institutions and organizations onto this distributed network, which is quite robust and incredibly neutral and not easy to attack, and was packed. And soon after, sort of quit my job at the bank and then spent on doing research in crypto. Soon after, I stumbled upon another sort of life-changing thing that Vitalik put out on his blog, notably on April 2018. And
good date.
Yeah, and it was like a blog post on radical markets. Radical Markets was a book published by two American economists, Eric Posner and Glenn Weil, and it was basically an attempt to inspire people to reimagine the building blocks of our social institutions like democracy and markets and information networks and capital markets, and the ideas that Vitalik sort of summarized there and then showed how Ethereum could be a great playing field for these ideas really struck me maybe even more, or at least half as much as Ethereum struck me a year earlier. And then fortunately I was able to get in touch at community events of the Radical Exchange movement, which is a social movement which sort of came as a result of the discussions that happened around this book and the ideas that were presented in, among others, ideas like quadratic voting, quadratic funding, Heidelberg attacks, and some other interesting ideas that were proposed there. And the goal of this movement is basically to experiment with these ideas, but also to refine them and solve social issues that arise within institutions based on these ideas. I finished university in 2020 and then joined Radical Exchange Foundation, which is a non-profit dedicated to advancing these radical exchange ideas. And this is also where I like more and more got in touch with Gitcoin, because Gitcoin is arguably the largest live examples of these ideas that were sort of publicized in 2018 in the Radical Markets book. And at the same time, we ran hackathons around radical exchange ideas via Gitcoin in that time. And this is sort of how I got in touch with the Gitcoin team. And then in May 21, so not even a year ago, but after having collaborating with the team, I sort of got into a position where I was like half-time Radical Exchange, half-time Gitcoin. Then in late summer, I transitioned into a more full-time role at Gitcoin and basically trying to herd cats in the builder community, inspire builders to build for the public and not for privately owned for-profit VC firms. And just guiding them where they find, cool gigs to work on hackathons and how they can set up grants and why Gitcoin grants is an interesting thing. And yeah, I guess we'll talk about that more in a second.
Yeah, that's an interesting story. Like people into crypto, they come from such different places. Some of them come because of the computer science background. That's a pretty obvious path, but many people come through economics or through sociology or psychology, game design. There are so many disciplines merging together in this one concept. I think that's why all these projects get so crazily creative that you just couldn't connect these dots because these people have different backgrounds and it's so diverse when it comes to ideas. The thing that you said about your background is, many people, when they had the first contact with crypto, they were thinking that it's very libertarian thing. But the longer I spent in this crypto space, the more I feel that it's also very socialist. It's a very strange blend of libertarian and socialist ideas that haven't been, merged together too many times before. And at least I haven't, bumped into that.
Yeah, it's interesting that you would, in crypto conferences, right, you might run into somebody who is like a total neoliberalist saying I don't want any social institutions, I just need my crypto, my gun, and my car. And then you'll run into others who are playing around with these more innovative democratic institutions, I don't know, quadratic funding and Gitcoin grants, or all the other DAOs sort of evolving now. It's exciting.
And I think one of the reasons why these libertarians aren't that much opposed to these concepts is the fact that you have this right to exit, that it's very voluntary. I come from the ex-communist country myself, and our communism was a very non-voluntary thing that we experienced.
A nice way to put it.
Yeah. But here, because people can choose to enter this kind of system, and you have so many different tokenomics that are the small economies.
Yeah,
I think that's the thing that let these people let they do whatever they want. No one is forcing you to accept some kind of rules.
Yeah,
just getting to Gitcoin, for the people who might not know the numbers, Gitcoin has almost $50 million funded to open source, over 2,000 projects created, and over 300,000 active developers, and tons of good made on the way, of course. So could you share the story behind Gitcoin and what had been the main idea behind the platform when it was built?
Sure. Yeah, I think Gitcoin initially was started from Kevin O'Walkie, who is still the CEO at Gitcoin and Colorado-based digital technology entrepreneur, Scott Moore and Vivek. Sorry, I can't recall Vivek's last name.
Yeah.
But they basically met and I think started building an organization around a prototype that Kevin built back in the day, which was the Bounties product actually of Gitcoin, which basically just allows you to post a GitHub issue onto the Gitcoin platform and sync it, and then attach a reward to it, or bounty. That's where the name comes from. So you could have a very specific, but also very open challenge, and just post it out there and say, hey, we need this bug in our open source repository to be fixed. And then developers could apply to do this. You can also have contest style bounties where like anyone could submit work and then the winner will be chosen. And the winner will receive that bounty that was attached to it, or the applicant who completes the job. So that was already, I think, cool, basically doing something like 5R or, like all these freelance platforms do, but for open source projects.
These bounties were in, US dollars or crypto?
Crypto, yeah, I forgot to say.
Okay.
I think initially primarily like Ethereum tokens, and now like we've integrated a bunch of networks. But yeah, there was also another caveat, and it made it very easy, for developer working in one part of the world to collaborate with an organization in the other part of the world. And I think the nature of many open source communities that they are like geographically quite distributed. So crypto obviously has great utilities there in terms of facilitating these payments.
Okay.
And then I think similar to my journey, likely the founders of Gitcoin sort of stumbled upon this radical exchange movement and these ideas that were put forth in the book Radical Markets. I think the idea that probably caught most of their attention and is like the foundation of Gitcoin grants now is called quadratic funding, which is like an edited version of quadratic voting. And quadratic funding was designed and proposed in a paper, I think co-published between Glenn Weil and Vitalik Buterin, and Zoe Hitzig. So if you're like a math fan or anything, like more of a researcher, you might want to check out that paper. You just look for liberal radicalism on DuckDuckGo or Google or whatever, and we'll find that. I think we could put that in the show notes for people. But anyway, like in this paper, one of the applications for the quadratic funding mechanism that already gets proposed is open source software. So maybe let's talk about the mechanism a little bit. So basically what it does is you need a community or like a philanthropist organization in an ecosystem or community to put up a matching fund. So a fund of money, but it could also be like artificial credits or tokens that matches contributions to projects in the community or donations to projects in the community. So you could imagine in a very like simple context that, I don't know, the city of New York could put up a matching fund of, I don't know, $1 million and then say, okay, we want to use that money to support public schools in New York. And then the citizens of New York could make donations to the schools that they like. And the matching fund will then match the contributions made by the New York community. But here's a like quadratic twist. Like that model matching funding already exists, I think even in New York, but without the quadratic twist. And the problem without the quadratic twist is that how it works usually is that if you donate $1, this $1 will be matched with $1, and like $10 will match with 10, and $1,000 will match with 1,000. So the problem is if, Michael Bloomberg donates, I don't know, $1 million to the school he supports, like most of the matching fund will go to that project. Yeah. Whereas people who are just donating $1 won't really make the impact. So in quadratic funding, the algorithm that does the matching basically only considers the square roots of these individual contributions. So $1 contribution remains a $1 contribution, $4 is a $2, $9 is $3. Okay. 110. So you see like the marginal impact that you get on deciding where the matching fund goes like decreases with the size of your donation.
So it's like an anti-whale.
Exactly. Although we still allow like people to make bigger contributions, which is a good thing in my opinion, to protect minority needs. Like if a small group really needs something, they can make a bigger impact. But it's, like in this paper and in other papers around quadratic voting, we can see that this quadratic pricing formula for impact is sort of, or it is literally proportional, like it's a linear proportion between like how much the next unit of influence costs related to the impact of that unit. So you have like, the first unit costs $1. Yeah. The second unit costs $3. The third costs $5, and you have this proportional growth there.
If I want to, get some projects funded, if I convince 10 people to fund $1, it's the same as if I myself funded $100. So it's like,
Yeah.
so it kind of like make it more about people, like number of people, than the size of their wallets.
Exactly. Like a big group of people certainly can move the fund this way. And if you think about that system, it has two very neat implications. So one is, I think what we've mostly talked about, the decision aspect of it for the philanthropist that puts up the matching fund. And, city of New York case, like the city of New York, that they like know because, quadratic voting really allows the people to show like how much they want money to go to a school or not. Like you get a good decision that reflects the intensity of most of the people around. But another interesting implication is that if you know that my $1 donation will make the biggest impact, you get an incentive in the first place to contribute $1. Like oftentimes you might think in traditional like donation programs, why would I give $1? It doesn't really make any difference. But if that way you can have the largest impact on where the big money goes from the matching pool, like you really get an incentive to add $1. And if like millions of people give $1, the number for public goods and like public schools goes up. So what we have done with Gitcoin is basically, or we are doing, is that we ask like philanthropist organizations in the space or just like wealthy projects to put up these matching funds. I think like most of the matching funding historically was provided by Ethereum Foundation. So thank the Ethereum family for that. And then the Ethereum community can make contributions to projects in the Ethereum space. Like projects like PoApp or Rodkey or like Uniswap was funded in its seed stage through Gitcoin grants.
Oh,
like,
didn't know that.
Yeah. And then they went down the VC rabbit hole, sort of. But yeah, many projects get seed funding, but some of them like increasingly also are able to sustain a growing team through Gitcoin grants. And I think it's crazy to see that, in this global community, we've like the mechanism basically did its magic and motivates people like every quarter to make contributions to the projects that they like. And inherently, most of the projects in the Ethereum space are like public schools, right? They are like accessible to all.
Yeah.
By nature, open source, and anyone can fork and build on top of them. So I think we've now, through bounties and grants, with like grants doing most of the impact, raised over $50 million in 3 years using quadratic funding. And it's like the largest example of this mechanism. But we could, you could certainly actually use that to fund like public infrastructure in cities, to fund public schools, to fund public medical research and development. I think we're seeing that it's weird that medicine is patented, is problematic sometimes. But yeah, in this paper, to go back to the Gitcoin story, like open source communities, like in this quadratic funding paper, open source communities are like one of the highlighted use cases. And then I think Kevin, Scott, and Vivek sort of built the grants prototype, were able to get a matching fund supported by the Ethereum Foundation and other, like many other contributors today who support the matching fund. And yeah, numbers go up.
Yeah, only up and to the right.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting to me because, well, when I think about it in a broader terms, there's a lot of software that's kind of public good and it's being shared by many places in the world. Like, for example, software to organize waste in the city or software to organize like medical services and so on. Like I personally worked in, like I was auditing big, I need to find the right word so I don't have any problems with lawyers, but a big problematic investments of Polish governments in our medical software. And it was like, this like hundreds of millions of dollars to the, and it was crappy. They overpaid, there were many problems with that, legal problems as well. But, this is the thing that most countries have. So I can imagine that someday in the future, obviously not today, you could have an open source software that could at least partially be used by these public services, like, medical or, organizing the city. So there will be my next question. Like, do you only fund crypto or Web3 open source projects, or do you want to fund also outside of this space?
So within open source software, I think we are already helping outside of crypto projects to raise funding. I think in the most recent grants round, like just for listeners, we basically do this in rounds. Like grants round opens, people make donations. Then at time T, we look at the contributions, do the calculations of the quadratic formula, and then pay out this matching fund. And then we'll wait a little bit, have the next grants round, like we have this quarter by quarter. But in the last grants round, I think the most funding actually went to the Tor browser project, which is like a very, I think, established open source project, just, like a very privacy preserving web browser, and to the Electronic Frontier Foundation, which is like doing lots of privacy advocacy and building, like helping open source projects for private messaging.
Oh, nice.
So we are already seeing like big amounts of money like being funneled towards these type of projects. And beyond that, we even even in 2020, like when the pandemic broke out, I was like still only working at Radic Exchange back then, but I was like fascinated when I saw that Gitcoin put up like around for COVID emergency aid projects, projects that were like producing masks or tests or like helping people who were sick around the globe. I think in the summer of 2020, there was also like a small matching pool dedicated to the Black Lives Matter movement. Just in the most recent round in December 2021, we supported climate change, I guess, like the opposite of climate change, like climate support projects that do that, or like a longevity research and development projects that do like biomedical research or community building to help people age more healthy.
Okay, perfect.
And we are open like to organizing side rounds like that. So I don't know if you're like somebody who is super excited about open source medicine, like open music or open public art or whatever, you can get in touch with Gitcoin and we can see if we get the matching fund somehow through your connections or ours to facilitate a round focus on public art, for instance, or public music.
Okay, perfect. When we come back to the start of the Gitcoin, founders had an idea, they are ready to roll, but how they got their first investors and their first projects? Like, was it like a website that they shared somewhere around, or have they started on some Discord channel? Do you know any details about this origin story?
I don't know particularly. Like, I think the best piece on the history of Gitcoin is on the governance forum of Gitcoin, like gov.gitcoin.co.
Okay.
But I think it basically all started with that prototype of the bounties product that Kevin built.
Okay.
And I think he was working at Consensus at the time.
Yeah, because, like, as far as I remember, a big part of the first funding on Gitcoin was from the Consensus CEO.
Joseph Lubin.
Yeah. Joe.
Yeah, I think it was in that sense like incubated at, like, I don't know particular, like, because I was not with Gitcoin at the time, but I think it was incubated at Consensus, and most of the matching funds for the grants round were like funded, I think, by Vitalik Buterin or the Ethereum Foundation, like one or the other or both, and then other like philanthropists came in to support that. But yeah, I mean, it was like a community effort. Every like contributor in the beginning who made these like small donations that then get matched by the matching fund also like helped us grow the community and spirit around public software. And I hope that quadratic funding-based funding models become a viable alternative in the long term to VC funding. Like personally, I'm not a big fan of capitalist markets as we know them.
Okay.
Google and Facebook should not be our like benchmarks, but I guess that's sort of the vision for VCs, is like building the next Facebook or Google. But I feel like these institutions do more damage maybe than good for the world.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty complicated subject, and
for sure.
Yeah, but to get to the core of that, because you said one important thing, that Gitcoin started as this bounties prototype, and today Gitcoin means grants, bounties, quests, and virtual hackathons. So I'd like to focus on grants and bounties because these are the most popular ways of using Gitcoin. So I'm wondering, like, What were the technical and operational challenges that you faced?
Yeah, interesting.
Because, it seems like Gitcoin started something new. And every time you start something new, there are challenges on the way. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering what were they?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like there are tons of issues that you run into, especially with the quadratic funding problems on an operational like prospect. Like one classic issue, like the classic big issue that I think will be a continuous battle to work on is identity. Because if you understood that idea that like smaller contributions have more weight proportionally than bigger ones in the quadratic funding system, the sort of sneaky person might understand that and create many Ethereum accounts, split up the funds across these accounts, and then make many small donations from these different accounts.
Okay.
Because that gets more impact on the matching algorithm. So, if you had a Gitcoin grant up and running, Mac, and I wanted to, like, we were all friends and we knew a couple of people, like, our goal could be, like, let's all create many accounts, split up our funds and give it to Mac. And then, or you just do it yourself and just that way make a lot of money,
Okay. And how do you cope with that? Because it seems a pretty interesting challenge.
Yeah, it is. I get it. It's pretty and I think it will be like an ongoing issue. I don't think there are like perfect systems. So I think we'll need to keep iterate on the identity piece. But right now we have like a system called the trust bonus. It works in a way where like the more sort of identifiers that you control as an individuals you link to your Gitcoin profile, the more weight your identity gets in the matching. So if you don't verify any identifier, you don't get any weight basically on the matching. But if you verify your Twitter account, if you verify your Google account, if you verify some of the Ethereum-based identifiers like Proof of Humanity or Bright ID or your ENS, and IDENA is like an independent network. If you add all these together and basically it's a scale. It's not like 0 or 1, like human or not human, or like unique account or not unique account. It's like a scale. Like, and the more you verify, the higher the weight is that you get on with your contributions.
Okay.
So that is pretty interesting issue. It's getting like increasingly refined now, or like better and better as we grow. If you're interested in that, like you will find writings about that on our blog, or join the fraud detection and defense workstream in Gitcoin DAO. It's a working group basically tackling that issue. And they've now started to deploy statistics about past behavior and current behavior and like comparing behavior between agents and attackers. So you have like these algorithms comparing attackers' behavior, and given all the like trust bonuses people have, it's an increasingly complex statistical model that which then gets checked and balanced by humans. So the model would like spew out after a grand round, like these guys might be attackers or these guys and girls. And then human would take a deeper look at these accounts and check it out. It's quite like actually, I think, nice approach to this, as we are not like saying, okay, let's trust the machine, but actually it's like a algorithm working hand in hand with sort of the human evaluators and then seeing if these contributors are unique or not. But yeah, it's a fascinating problem. There's just one, and I think there are many others that we'll detect over time. I mean, you could imagine, let's say, we would be best friends, you and I, and you had a grant and I had a grant. We could basically send back and forth to each other money. Like you donate to my grant, I donate to your grant.
Yeah.
We send money back and forth, but it all counts as new donations. We just basically pumping donations, like, and get so much of the matching fund just because we love each other, or we are best friends in that sense. So I think sooner or later we'll also need mechanisms that account for the trust and love that we have between people.
Yeah.
Because otherwise people who really trust each other could cooperate in that sense, and I don't think it's fair. I think democracy works, or quadratic funding works when we build new bridges between people, but not enforce these existing ones.
Yeah.
So let's say, I mean, we have our first conversation right now, so we're actually not best friends. But if you had a Gitcoin grant and now, like, I'm deciding, okay, I'll contribute to Max Gitcoin grant in the next grants round, that's cool, right? Like, I signal to the democratic system, basically, this is a cool project. So I think that donation should get more weight than me
Uh-huh.
contributing to my girlfriend's project,
Yeah.
And then I think there'll be all these issues, but that's the nature of systems with more than like two players, right? That some players like each other more than others, and you'll have these like sneaky cooperation going on.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating because if I was a Web3 skeptic, I would say, oh, because, if you used simple KYC using ID and so on, you could
Yeah.
just not create this giant problem. But it would miss the point because the idea is that you can donate to any ground and you don't need to dox yourself.
Yeah.
And I think the way it's great that you try to solve this problem. And even if someone said, okay, you created this problem because you could do it the other way, I can imagine that there are people in the countries, for example, in China or Russia, that would like to donate to some projects that if they doxed themselves, it might be a problem.
Yeah, for sure.
How these countries work. So I think it's super fascinating. And regarding this reputation, the funny thing is that it also works the other way around. Like I've seen people and airdrops where whenever you donate it to some Gitcoin funds, you get some extra, money or you get whitelisted because they want people who share with the community.
Yeah.
I think that's a very cool thing about Gitcoin and about crypto in general, that these transactions are visible.
I see what you mean, yeah. But at the same time, like it's a dilemma again. I think, whether we want these transactions to be visible to humans in that sense, because it's almost like bribery, right? If I would say like, okay, I'll put up this Gitcoin grant. If you donate to me today, I'll gift you tokens tomorrow. Yeah. It's like, so.
Yeah. So many problems.
But there might be like lines that we can walk within the realm of like not being, that it's not bribery. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's funny, but it's classic, right? When democracy was founded or like put into action in the US in the 18th century, probably people didn't anticipate they did or might not, the issues that they now have around the vote count in the US, still like 300 years after that, or like when Adam Smith came up with the capitalist thing.
Yeah.
Like he probably didn't anticipate, like, I don't know.
The housing bubble.
Or like this GameStop stock hype, whatever. Like there'll be so many issues. And I think nevertheless, it's an argument. It's not an argument to not try. And I feel like we see so many problems, like inequality, conflict, and even unproductive growth, like through capitalism. And I don't think that nation states also do a good job at like building open source software.
Yeah.
But I don't think privately owned for-profit corporations also don't do a very good job if you think about the damage that many of these corporations do to society. So I think it's like quadratic funding is this super interesting middle ground, actually, where you take the egalitarian values and like the social values of democracy and almost merge them with the flexibility and efficiency of capitalism, because you could directly deploy money to new projects. Like the community has done that in last year, for instance, with COVID and the Black Lives Matter round. So whenever there's a need, we can very easily deploy capital to it based in this very democratic ideal. And it's like this natural synthesis almost of like markets and democracy, which couldn't be more exciting in my opinion.
The large opportunity that you create is that people can really work on open source full time, or at least dedicate more time, because the big problem with open source before crypto was that many projects were run by people who were doing it, either after hours, or if they were doing it full time, they couldn't. Very often they had some gigs, they were speaking at conferences and so on, but they couldn't rely on this source of income. And because of that, fewer people pursued this path. And I think it's, open source is different than normal business. Because, like, for example, if you have, people who are very good at Stanford or Harvard or Cambridge, whatever, when you ask them where do they want to work, most of them won't name any NGO.
Yeah.
Most of them want to work in a company, because it's not that NGOs are bad, but very often they are not efficient.
Yeah, or they don't pay so well. Like, that's another thing.
Yeah.
And it's fair. I mean, we all need to pay our bills and like, have families and need to walk up to our partners and say, okay, like, I don't earn anything. I just work for the public.
Yeah, but I saved some kids in Africa, and for some people that's okay. But for some people it's like, okay, but we have our kids and, they need to go to school and so on. So I think the thing that Gitcoin really does is that you kind of build this opportunity to go full-time to open source.
Exactly. And NGOs.
Yeah, and NGOs as well. So make it like, get very talented people from all over the world to work on these super complex problems, as we have heard. That's why I was so excited about our conversation today, because I really feel that this mission of Gitcoin is larger than Web3, larger than crypto. It's more like a social, economical change that you are doing.
Yeah, also, I don't know what your funding model is with this podcast, but I think there are some like eligibility criteria for the grants rounds. Like, I think you cannot apply, for instance, if you are backed by a venture capitalist. But if you don't have like a VC backing you, for instance, I think you should certainly be able to put up a grant and have the communities and listeners make donations in the next grant round.
It would be cool. Like, it's finance out of my pocket. So basically,
cool. Yeah. Yeah. So you should do that. I mean, if the community benefits from it, they'll probably make some donations and you'll get a match. Happy to assist you in setting it up.
Okay, sounds super cool. But we don't, you won't get any of my tokens because I don't want to bribe you.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, that's super great to hear about it. And, I'd like to ask you about the other side of the equation, about the growth, because Gitcoin has grown very fast. And I was wondering, what have been the biggest growth challenge? This kind of either growing pace, so the things that you have experienced because of the size growing up, but also the growth challenges like, for example, we don't have enough developers, or we don't have enough projects or something like that.
Yeah, interesting. I think there's like various factors. One is just awareness about like the power of the mechanism and the scalability, and that, some projects are already like basically full-time funded through Gitcoin grants. Why don't you have a Gitcoin grant? You should have one. I don't think people understand it's so easy. You just write what you're doing, link your podcast, put your logo in there, and then promote it in your community. And I don't think that not everyone seems to understand that it's so accessible and so open to anyone who's building a public good. I mean, your podcast seems like a public good, right? Like, people can just listen to it anywhere. So that's cool. That's one. Then on the other hand, I think back in Gitcoin was started in the bear market in 2018. So there, I think it was obviously hard to, raise donations if people were already struggling to. But at the same time, it also, I think, motivated people to give to the projects that they think the ecosystem needs to survive. So, they said, okay, I'll give $1 to this project that I think Ethereum needs right now to survive the bear market, But obviously, we've seen last year, tremendous growth. I think at the beginning of 2020, the total value Gitcoin facilitated was 20 million. And 1 year later, we had 50 million. That was fast growth. Yeah, I think that is likely also due to the capital that sort of was flooded into the crypto ecosystem. And many projects were able to give more just because they sort of had way more balance in their crypto accounts. So I think definitely bull markets help to get people excited about making donations. Yeah, it's that we need larger matching funds. I think larger matching funds are the great motivators for the community to then in turn make donations. So if you're a philanthropist listening to this, reach out please and support public goods in the Ethereum ecosystem. But yeah, then also, the technical scalability of Ethereum to a certain degree. We'd probably not be able to facilitate grants rounds with billions of participants just because Ethereum wouldn't be able to handle that today.
Yeah.
But with the merge and more and more roll-up integrations, we have already integrated ZK Sync, I think maybe even in late 2020.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So you can check out your contributions via ZK-Sync. I think like sooner or later we'll integrate most of the like rollups and scalability solutions out there. But for that, we obviously need also better wallets. Like MetaMask need to probably do a better job to in terms of experience for humans to interact, like cross rollup and switching between mainnet and rollup and all that experience to it needs to improve. So it's probably just a lack of capital awareness in like that this like opportunity exists, and funding and then also some technical challenges that are like to be resolved in Ethereum. But I'm hopeful that there'll be more capital coming into the ecosystem and like wider adoption of crypto and more like technical challenges in the protocol level and experience will be solved too. So
with this accessibility, you really got me. I would never think that I could apply for a grant, and I know many people that do more like the Gitcoin-like projects. I mean, projects with code, not with words, like mine.
Yeah.
And they haven't thought about it either because, when you think about grant, you think about a very lengthy process.
Yeah.
This connotation in your mind, like I think about either scientific grant or a grant from the government where there's so much paperwork that it's not worth it, basically.
You're right, yeah.
And like I know the word grant is a very precise word to describe what you're doing, but I think it also has these connotations in people's mind.
Totally.
With something not really cool.
Yeah. That's what I mentioned earlier, right? Like the nation state is down to funding open source, but they're not as flexible as the markets and capitalism.
Yeah.
And now we have grants that are as flexible as like capitalism, which is so cool. But yeah, it's funny that you point that out. But me too, like when I was working at Radical Exchange, for instance, like which is a non-profit too, like we did grant applications, which means drafting these like pages, proposals, and then talking to the other non-profits who have more money than you to give you funding, and it's like a lengthy process, right?
Also, regarding this VC role, I think that VCs in this bear market definitely helped some project, like to save some projects because there was not enough money. But I think in the long run, projects like either Gitcoin or, ENS for me is a great example of projects without investors, basically, that delivered so much value and still delivers. Like I hold their airdrop till the day I die. That's my goal. But I really believe in them. But I'm wondering because we are talking about, some funds or either some philanthropists. So I'm wondering, do you also have some funding from funds? I mean, like, either VC funds or some companies that want to match, some projects?
I don't know particularly. I think like we have a place where you can find out who the matching funders were.
Okay.
But I'm 100% sure that they're like among these were like at least a bunch of like DeFi projects.
Okay.
Which I think had like VC backing who then like supported the matching fund.
Okay.
And like for instance, Uniswap had like their ecosystem round like focused on like Gitcoin grants round basically for Uniswap projects. And Uniswap has I think VC funding and now they're running grants rounds to support their ecosystem. So I think they do this a lot, but capitalism to me has like a deep problem in the sense that I think for something to be actually helpful or valuable for like society, it needs to be A, accountable, transparent, and B, like value aligned or democratic.
Yeah.
Because I mean, nobody, like no one person, like not me, not you, not like Elon Musk, not Larry Page can know how Google should work. It needs to be, a collective decision in a way. With VC-backed technologies, it's different, right? It's just a handful of wealthy guys deciding how our virtual, like in digital technology VCs, like deciding how our digital technologies work. And at the same time, they're not transparent, right? Most of them are not open source. Same in the crypto space. I mean, for many projects, like the backend might be open source, but then the front end is not open source. And they collect lots of like read data about people, and I think there are some interesting critiques in the recent months that
Yeah, I think it's a lot like there's a lot of things about incentives and it's
Yeah.
very hard to.
Yeah, the main goal is to maximize value, right? The main
Yeah.
goal of VCs is like getting rich. And in Google's and Facebook case, that meant to like extract people's attention and soul to, like these platforms. It's there.
I'm a bigger fan of Google than Facebook for sure, but it's definitely, this quote that I believe in is don't hate the player, hate the game.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
I think Web3 is
I like
about
that.
rewriting the rules of the game.
Exactly.
So that you can win in the game without, trying to capture as much as you can for yourself. Because if you do that, you will get punished. Like, for example, the story with OpenSea right now, that, there's a big controversy with them trying to do an IPO. Like, not trying, to be precise, but like, considering IPO. But people get mad about tokens and then, OpenDAO and LuxRare just come in and just try to punish these extracting behaviors because the rules of the game, of the Web3 games are different. And that's the thing that I really like. Obviously, it has many problems.
Yeah, I like your emphasis on like hate the game, not the player. And there's obviously also like some benefit to what like many VCs, like in some way or the other, technologies that VCs produce are useful. Yeah. But I think the game is inherently not made for humans, or like humanity, but for like the wealthy people of humanity.
I have one question about the community because we are talking about people.
Yeah.
Because Gitcoin community, as far as I understand, is developer centric. It's quite different from the communities you build when you launch an NFT or DeFi project or, token to the moon project. So how do you nurture this kind of community? What's important to developers in Gitcoin community?
Yeah, I think there are many things. I mean, one is, I think, like, especially for like public digital technology developers, just the fact that they get acknowledged and funded for their public work already means a lot. And I think this is how we've been able to foster like vital, like diverse community that's growing every day. Like just the fact that they understand, okay, I do work for the public without, having much control over what I build. And this is a place where that gets acknowledged and even rewarded is one thing. And then, I mean, this is more like comes to like micro relationships and stuff. But, if you come to the Gitcoin Discord, which I can recommend you to do if you want to set up a grant or participate in a hackathon, just like having actual people, responding to you and being down to hop on a call with you. If you want to join the Gitcoin community as a hackathon participant or as a grant owner, like you'll find somebody to guide you through this process. And even if you're not a developer yet, let's say you're, like I was back in the day, like an economics graduate, but you want to become a Web3 developer, you'll like find guidance on how you can get started building on Ethereum. I'll tell you, check out Scaffold ETH. If you're other person wanting to start Ethereum development, like check out Scaffold ETH built by Austin Griffith. And this is really everything you need to get started building Ethereum applications. Or if you are, not a developer and you don't want to become a developer, you can meet developers and be the project manager in a hackathon project or on a grant. And if you are interested in like finding like-minded people who are like building projects, either as a designer, a developer, project manager, come to the Gitcoin Discord and you'll like find people and ways to get involved and also rewarded.
Oh,
we haven't talked so much about that, but you can get rewarded with your independent grants projects or like hackathon wins if you participate there. But you can even get involved in Gitcoin DAO, which is sort of the Ethereum-based organization that is now increasingly like making more decisions around like how the grants rounds operate and how we solve this difficult battle on identity and how we put out the word around Gitcoin. And I really, this is my full-time job. I hang out with the Gitcoin community every day, and it's really interesting mix of like people. I think Gitcoin does a great job also in including like people with different, perspectives and backgrounds and not so to say the traditional crypto bro. I'm really glad and proud to be part of that family.
Yeah, that sounds cool and very permissionless. Like, the idea that you can just join some projects and learn from these people and do something together without all these formalities from the normal world. Sounds super cool. I'm wondering, like, what's the process? Like, do you have, some rooms on Discord that are dedicated, like, I'm looking for developers, I'm looking for PM, or how does it work?
So I'd say there's like three main ways when you join the Discord. So if you join the Gitcoin Discord, I think it's discord.gg/Gitcoin. You go to the Start Here channel in the top right. And then you've got we have this bot that lets you choose an emoji that basically represents your interests, and you can choose all three or just one or two. And one is around hackathon and events. And if you do that, you'll see a bunch of channels related to hackathons. One is called Team Up. So you see many people there saying, hey, I'm a designer and I'm looking for a project in this hackathon. Are you a developer and want to team up? Send me a DM. This is like the way to co-create hackathon projects. You can select in the Start Here channel the grants section, and then you'll find like other people like talking about the grants. And for you, for instance, if you need help with that, or you wanted to present your grant or feedback on your grant, Mac, like you could choose that and go there and then ask people all the like builder related questions, like where do I get started with Ethereum development and stuff, is I think also mostly sitting in the hackathon related channel. And then there's there should also be a section focused on the Gitcoin DAO, the Ethereum-based organization running more and more Gitcoin operations. And for that, I think there's like a semi-formal application process, just so we can make sure that we are not like working with people with bad goals in mind. And for that process, you go to gitcoindao.com. And then I think the current process that you go to gitcoindao.com, fill out a form, and then we'll get back in touch with you and get you onboarded on Discord. But meanwhile, you wait for the feedback. I can really just recommend go to like all the open Discord channels, and there are a bunch, and talk about Gitcoin DAO. Anyone can make a governance proposal on the Gitcoin DAO forum and saying, hey, I want to do this initiative for Gitcoin and apply for a grant, or ask for contributors from the Gitcoin DAO community. Even if it's too hard to remember all that, or find like an overview of this, just come to the Gitcoin Discord, and I promise like there'll be somebody from our team like down to onboard you in the direction that you want to pursue.
Okay.
Like whether that's hackathons, grants, or working with us directly.
Cool. Yeah, it seems that you have it well organized. I really like this idea with the emojis that unlock different parts of the server. Like, I haven't seen it yet. I've seen them just, as a verification, but it also shows you not only works for users because, they see different parts of the server, but it also works for you because you know the demand for different parts of Gitcoin activity. So I really like the fact that it works two-way. You can learn about your users thanks to these emojis.
For sure.
Okay, so we get to the three last questions that I always ask. The first one will be about Web3 projects, because I bet that you've seen quite many of them because of your, occupation. Yeah. And I'm wondering, what were the most mind-blowing Web3 projects that you've seen? Something that either inspired you, or you were just like, what the hell? How they connected these dots together?
Yeah, not being the founder of Gitcoin, I think I can say like Gitcoin is one of the like most inspiring to me, because if you think about like many projects in the crypto space, like just remodel like the institutions we know, but without regulation on a distributed ledger instead of like nation state contracts. So I'm not too excited about like many of the things going on. I'm really fascinated with this like new political economic setup called quadratic funding, and there are a bunch of projects doing like similar stuff. I think the Optimism team and their roll-up are like doing like a great technical job, just building this scalable roll-up with secure forged proofs connecting with the main network, like just making sure nothing goes wrong in case the roll-up goes down for some time.
Yeah.
And what they do with the retroactive public goods funding there, based on quadratic voting too, that mechanism is fascinating. Everything I think the Ethereum Foundation and like their close collaborators are doing, I think is just incredible work, like in the field of cryptography more generally, if you think about it, like honestly, Ethereum in its current form is not very scalable. It almost is like a calculator or something in a distributed network. The virtual machine, handles like not so much computations, but it's crazy to look at the roadmap and how they do updates to this live living system and all these like diverse applications that need to get built on top of it. And I'm confident that the merge will happen soon and that we'll have a like diverse roll-up infrastructure with different wallet providers plugging into that. And like that big picture roadmap really fascinates me. Then CLR fund, I don't know if you know that one.
No.
It's basically also quadratic funding for Ethereum projects. I don't know if they're still on the XDAI network, but they also built like a cool, basically very similar project to Gitcoin grants, and I like what they're doing there. Then the like infrastructure providers, I don't know, like MetaMask and but also like the other rollups like Arbitrum and ZK Sync. I think it's great to see like the continuous progress and that we can rely on them. But these are not really technology projects, but I also glad about these community focused projects like Bankless, is podcasts that I listen to like every week. I guess I have to admit I haven't experienced your podcast yet. Like it's the first time how I got in touch with you, but I'm also not hanging out on crypto Twitter a lot, so probably if I would be doing that I'll know you. But I'll definitely listen to that one as well in the future. And ETHUB, all these like basically podcasts and like people who write about Ethereum in their newsletters, I think helped me a lot in keeping track of what's going on. So yeah, I think it's like all the experiments on the protocol layer, the infrastructure that's getting built to make the protocol faster through like sometimes additional protocols like rollups, then flywheels like CLR fund and Gitcoin grants to fund that work. But notably, like I think one cool development though is, although I'm not a big fan of like NFT JPEGs, like I'm a fan of NFTs generally, but I think the JPEG use case is not as incredible. But I'm still happy to see that like many digital artists now have like this source of revenue that they didn't really have before that. So I think that's also a quite like interesting development there, that we are like funding this art community basically through these like JPEGs. But honestly, I would prefer, instead of like just wrapping NFTs around the JPEGs, I'd prefer to, and we don't even wrap NFTs around the JPEGs. We wrap like NFTs mostly, like for most of the NFTs or art NFTs, around IPFS links, right? Or like Arweave links. So instead, I would like a platform like Gitcoin, like a fork of Gitcoin or CLR fund. And we are building like one working group in Gitcoin DAO called D-Grants. And they're building like a forkable grants protocol that any community could deploy to fund the public goods in their realm. And I would love for somebody to fork, D-Grants to have a grants platform based on quadratic funding for artists. So instead of, doing all these issuing NFT after NFT, you could just have a page like the grant owners on Gitcoin saying, hey, I'm an artist. This is all the art I'm producing for the public. There's no copyright. I don't own it. It's like public art. You can display it wherever you want. This is how you copy the JPEG and paste it. And, then having these projects being funded from the community as well. And I guess I'm sure that like some artists, NGOs, or like just philanthropist artists would be down to fund matching pools there. But I'm still happy that artists found crypto, at least as a like destination that is still to be explored.
Yeah, it sounds super cool. I have this NFT project idea in my mind for quite a long time. I couldn't do it because I'm not such a skilled visual artist, but imagine having an art, like this big art, like Sistine Chapel level art, when you have like many people, many different elements.
Yeah.
But instead of showing some history of sin or some, things from the Bible, you could show the history of the internet with all these famous people and just put it on the website where you could just, move around the website and see all the details. Like it would be a super cool NFT. And it would be super hard to do it yourself because it takes like a year or maybe even more. I don't know. Like, I guess, quite a lot of time. But this would be a super cool thing to have just for the public, and you could use platform like yours too.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And I think it like open source software and public art are not very different, I suppose. Like I really like that idea of having this collaborative art project like the 16's Capel thing.
Yeah.
Because I think it would have the same benefits as open source. I recently read this quote from Naval like yesterday that he said like the good thing about something along the lines of like the good thing about open source software is that we only need to fix the problem once.
Yeah.
And it's the same with these like collaborative art projects, I suppose. Like, you know, like we don't need to do all that again, but no.
Yeah, cool. Okay, and you know, I have also the next question from totally different point of view. It's the question like, what were the funniest thing that you've seen in the Web3 space? Something that made you either smile or just shake your head and like, whoa.
I think it was like the whole situation. I was at the Ethereum Community Conference in March in 2020 in Paris.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, there was March 2020 in Paris, and basically like Italy was already like blowing up with COVID, you know, like, and everyone in Paris was like me, you know, like many crypto people were like feeling so secure. And even myself, you know, I have to laugh at myself. I was like, okay, you know, I'm not shaking hands, I'm giving elbows. And we were all inside this building for like 3 days, having the buffet and, you know, like the, I don't know, public bathroom, no mask, like, and we were all like feeling safe. And I mean, it's not funny that people got infected. Until today, I'm not sure if I was infected. I had like a flu at least a week after, but I wasn't tested by my doc. But how like that was my last public experience before 2 years of less social stuff. And then my next conference after that was again in Paris and again in the same conference because we had Delta then last summer. Like people got like, infected. I think it's funny how like the only social gatherings, the last ones I went to were COVID, and both times, not COVID, the ECC conference, and both times like was a mess. But
yeah, you should definitely.
It's not funny, but it's.
Maybe you should choose a different place for the conference because Paris sounds cursed, you know. Okay.
Yeah.
So Leon, I have only last question because we are getting till the end. Do you have any idea with whom should I talk next? Like, do you have any idea who would be a good fit for this kind of conversation?
Interesting, yeah. I think there are so many people that, for instance, have you talked to Austin Griffith yet?
No, I don't know.
Austin Griffith is arguably, I think, the best like developer mentor in the Ethereum ecosystem.
Oh.
And he also leads a work stream on Gitcoin DAO, which is focused on prototyping dApps for DAOs and like public goods production. The Moonshot Collective. It's like a working group of the Gitcoin DAO. But yeah, I think he does a great job in giving builders low-hanging fruits to start developing Ethereum apps, no matter like if they're experienced builders or not. But that might be a good fit. And I really also would encourage you to talk to like more people from this sort of radical, like who are working on radical exchange inspired projects in Ethereum, like the CLR fund folks or like people from the radical exchange movement directly. Yeah, I'd love to inspire more builders to build more like socially innovative stuff compared to, you know, just capitalist institutions on the blockchain.
Okay. Thanks for this recommendation. I will ping you, you know, for some more details.
I'll try what I can do. Try my best.
So thanks a lot, Leon. Like it was very interesting and very deeper dive than I expected. And you know, for the listeners, we talked before the podcast that I always send the title after the episode is recorded because it's hard to predict what will it be really about because sometimes these conversations are very loose. And yeah, definitely here I couldn't predict, you know, the subjects that we covered. So thank you for that. It was very interesting and, you know, all the best.
Thank you so much. You too. And I hope to see your Gitcoin grant up and running sometime in the future.
Yeah.
By the way, do you already have like an idea now for the title of the episode or not really?
Oh, God. You know, I was thinking about, I have idea for keywords, not the title.
Yeah.
The first keyword obviously would be Gitcoin because it's about Gitcoin.
For sure, yeah. Gotta represent.
The second will be about funding. The third will be about public goods. But I would like to highlight also this innovative and more like social oriented attitude that you take.
Yeah.
So, you know, it could be like something how Gitcoin uses socially oriented funding model for public goods or whatever. I might not use quadratic funding because it seems, very...
Yeah, it's a bad marketing term.
Yeah, it's the same level as non-fungible token. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I will come up with something definitely. So I will send you that.
That was fun, man. I'd love to have like more conversations also off the record like this, and hopefully maybe we'll see each other in like a European crypto conference or whatever.
I will definitely come to some conference this year. That's my New Year's resolution. So we will see each other.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good one.